Welcome back to my coding live stream. My name is Ashley Davis and this is part 6 of a special coding live stream that I started yesterday and I'm continuing today. I'm building an outliner component in React and TypeScript. And let's jump straight back in where we left off 10 minutes ago. So on the right here you can see that I've got my little note-taking React UI component here. We've just finished fixing some issues that mean I can now actually, type into notes that don't actually have anything in them yet. I've pushed that code already between live streams, so that's up there now on the code repository. Let's have a look back at my plan to see where I'm going to head next. So I'm pushing on with milestone 5. I've done my refactoring there. I'm pushing on with milestone 5. So I'm planning to make this a tree. I want to be able to indent to create nested notes. I want to be able to shift indent to move a nested note back to the parent. And deleting a parent note should also delete the child, or I should say delete the children. So expanding it to a tree, this implies that we're going to have a tree data structure and we're going to have to use recursion to process that. Let's have a look at the data structure as it exists now. So up the top of the index.tsx file here, you can see that I've got a note. Now, what I want to do is change this so that a note can have children. So it optionally has children. So that's what the question mark there is, that this could be undefined. For this being undefined means there are no children. We could also have an empty array meaning no children. So this is the children of the note comprising a hierarchy of notes. Now we're going to have to basically write a function that recurses this tree to render these things. Before we can add them, so we can't add children yet. I need to kind of wire up a key that we can use to add children. I'm not going to do that. Now, if we had the automated tests online, I'm going to close the automated tests file there. If we had the automated tests online, we could do this through test-driven development, but because of Enzyme not working with React 17, our tests are all horribly broken, and I've just decided to kind of let them go for the moment. So what I'm going to do is in my testbed app, actually what I might do is just in the component here. So you can see in the component here, I'm setting up some default notes. This should probably default to nothing, but for the purposes of testing, it's great to have a default there. What I might do though is move this to a variable, default notes, so I don't have to repeat the code there for each of these cases. And so I had a function here, make note. What I'm going to do is just put that, what I had there previously, into this variable default notes. I don't even need this variable here. I don't think I need this sort of original default note. Is that gonna, I just hit Control-Shift-B to build it in Visual Studio Code, and Visual Studio Code shows me there's a problem. Okay, cool. So I do need that default note. That is being used to initialize a new note there, but that's actually a problem. I should actually make that make note anyway. So that should make an empty note be the default note. Because what we've got in each note is we've got this unique identifier that's a generated GUI. That's actually kind of like required there for it to work with the React drag and drop beautiful. It requires an ID for each thing that can be drag and dropped. I am going to have to change this though, because one thing I realized yesterday actually was that this library that I'm using to do this, which is this, if I just go up the top of the file, you can see where I import it. I'm using this React Node UID library here. That puts a warning up in the browser that says that it's defaulting to using like math.random instead of the Node.js cryptography library, because we're running this in the browser, we're not running it in Node.js. So there is an issue, or there's a potential issue with using that library. I don't think it's a fatal issue. I don't think it's something that's going to necessarily cause a major problem, but that's something I might come back to and fix later. Anyway, I'm just gonna I've just refactored that a tiny bit. I just want to test that it all still works. Looks good. That's a small refactor. I will just commit that. I'm just going to get rid of this change to package lock. I don't know what that is. It's probably nothing dangerous, but I'll just discard it. Okay, so I'm not gonna commit everything. I don't want to commit this change. I don't want to commit this change that adds part of this tree data structure yet. I'm going to commit that later. So I'm going to pick this apart, and I'm going to commit just a couple of these hunks here, the things that I want to get through, and just to have safe in version control. That'll good. Cool. So that's a small refactor there, just to I guess take away the repetition in the code for creating the default note. Now that I've refactored that, what I want to do is I want to make a little hierarchy of notes here that I can then render. So this is even before we have the ability to add a nested note. I'm going to basically hard code in the data so that we can manually test this. Just going to reformat this a little bit so I can more easily see the structure here. Now each note can have children optionally, so let's pass that into make note as a parameter here. Children, it's an optional parameter that we have child notes going in. I'm just going to put a nice little comment on this function, so I'm never really going to forget, but I feel if I don't put a comment, I feel like I've left something out. Just a little reminder to me later to know what that does. So I'm passing in the children here, and each one of these, I don't need to update these because I only need to add that second parameter where there are actually going to be children. So let's add a couple of child notes here. Child note 1 and child note 2. Oops, I need to put that parenthesis right on the outside. And I'll just do a little bit of indenting here so I can kind of easily see the structure that I'm creating. So you can see how it's sort of turning into a little tree-like structure. Now, this won't change what I've got here. I've added some children, but I haven't added any code to render them yet, so we don't see any children here yet. Let's add that code now. Actually, I've got a little bit of an error here. Oh, it's just it's a lint error. And I do like this. Some of the lint rules I think are a little bit pedantic, and I hate them. But this one where it tells you to put the comma on the end, that's something I like to do anyway. So I'm kind of happy that lint tells me when I've forgotten to add that comma. Now let's scroll down to the render function. So basically, what we want to do here is for each note, we want to add children. I'm gonna approach this by wrapping the note in another div. And then at the bottom of the note, I'm going to render the children. Now, I've got to render a list of children here, so I'm going to use, what am I using? It's relative to the current note, and it's the children. And I only want to do this if children is defined. So I'm going to use the AND operator here to say, if we've got children, if children is not undefined, then we map over the children to produce a UI for each of them. So for each child then, let's produce a user interface for that child. Now this is where it gets recursive, because like a note is this bit here. So I've actually got to factor this note out into a function that I can call recursively. Actually, I should it's actually this whole section here that I've got to call recursively. So it's like here what I'm doing now is I'm going to call that function again for each child. But to do that, I can't get away with not refactoring this out. So I'm going to basically cut this out. And what I'm going to do, even though the refactored function doesn't exist yet, I'm gonna make a call to it here just so I know what I'm aiming at. So I want to render here. I want to render a note, and I'm passing in the note that I want to render. That comes from the map up here. So you see where that note comes from here. We're looping over all the top level notes, and then we want to render a single note. Now I've got to add that function. I'll make it private. No one externally outside this class needs to know about this function. Private render note. It's taking the note to render as its parameter. We can infer the type, so we don't have to worry about typing the return value there. This is formatting. It's automated formatting is bad, isn't it? So let's just get that formatted a bit better. So what I want to do is I want to return the UI for that note. So I'll enclose it in parentheses just to keep it all nice and just so I can see where it ends basically. So you can see here when I select that, I've selected this parenthesis with the cursor. You can see here that it highlights the other one. So that's a nice thing there. You can do that with any of these things actually. So if I select the curly bracket there, it shows me up here. It highlights the curly bracket up here, so I know where that ends. Now the other thing I need to do here, this is where it's going to get a little bit tricky with this key down handler. But I need to pass through the index of the note into render note so that I can pass that into the onKeyDown handler here. So let's put a little bit of a comment on this. So this is a function renders a note and its children. So this is where it becomes recursive because it's gonna call itself at this point. It's gonna we're gonna say render note to render the child, and at this point we need the index of the child to pass in. So I'm gonna have to add that parameter. So that's a parameter that the map function passes through to the anonymous function here, which is the index of the child in the children array. So what have I stuffed up here? Do I have an extra parenthesis? What does Visual Studio Code have to say? Oh, let's get rid of that. Still an issue? Oh no, I deleted a parenthesis that I did actually need. Okay, there we go. Cool. That looks good. Now I added the index parameter, so I've got to actually go and remember to add that down here as well. Now there is still a problem with that, and it's going to be related to deleting a note. So if we look at this onKeyDown here, you can see that it's always going to be deleting the note from the global notes list, and we don't want that. We want to delete it from, whatever parent. Whatever parent contained that note. But I'm going to come back and rectify that later. I'll just put it to there. This code always deletes the note from the global notes list, even though that won't work for child notes. So I will come back and rectify that soon. So, you can see over here that it's already updated. There's something wrong with this. I'm missing a bullet here. We'll have to have a look at that in a second. One thing I'm missing here is probably... Oh no, we've got the key. What I need up here is to potentially wrap this whole thing in a div. So I've got a list of children here. I want to wrap that in a div. I'm going to make this use Flexbox again to do the layout. So I'm going to set some inline styling here. See if I can do this Okay, I'm just going to need to check my Flexbox and my Tailwind cheat sheet to know what I want to use here. I'm making a flex column, so I need flex direction column. Let's put that in. And also, I also just need the flex class as well, which is display flex. That's easy. So we're rendering the children as a column, a flex column. That's not the only issue here, because I need to have a key in here. That's one thing I'm missing. So if I put a div in here and surround that in curly brackets, this should hopefully mean I can add my key, and I'll be using the ID of the child. This is there's a bit of a problem here with the drag and drop as well, because I probably need to wrap each child in its own draggable, and so and each section is going to need its own droppable as well. So the complexity in the drag and drop code will change, but at the moment I'm just focusing on rendering the node, so we'll come back to that. I've just realized that the code for rendering the bullet is outside the node, and that's why we're not getting the bullets that I want on the children there. So I'm actually going to need to move a fair chunk of this code here into this recursive function anyway. Let's full screen this and see what I need to do here. So I actually think I need to kind of have this whole section, because I think each item is going to need to have its own droppable and own draggable. Definitely its own draggable. But the actual thing here, like this is where I'm going to. I've just thought of a totally different way of structuring this that's going to make it so much easier to work with the drag and drop. I'm kind of thinking that instead of actually making this a tree like I've done here and have children, I'm kind of thinking that I just keep it as a list. What if I had an indent level? An optional indent level. And if that is set to 1, then it's the next level down. If it's set to 2, that's the next level down. This is not the most intuitive way of structuring this. You know, that's why structuring it as a tree is like my go-to. But actually, if I have it as a flat list with an indent level showing how far it's going to be indented and what parent it's under, that's actually going to make it work a lot better with the drag, because the drag and drop then can be a flat list. So you're just dragging these indented things with a flat list and then maybe adjusting your indent level depending on what you've dropped it under. And that also simplifies the code. It means we won't need this recursive function. So I think what I might do at this point is just revert all these changes that I've just made. So I feel like I don't need any of that I've just, and this code for deleting it as well, that will work the way it used to work, so I won't have any to do there to fix. Okay, so we're going to nuke that code change. You could do it from here. I could go here and I could just discard it directly from here, from source tree. Let's do it from the command line. I'll just quit out of my build process here and at the terminal. If I do a git status, you can see what I've changed. I've changed index.tsx. I'm going to do a git hard reset. Don't ever do this unless you want to lose all your working changes. And I hope this is the right decision. Drum roll, bang. We do a git status. I've just nuked the changes that I just made. We go back to source tree. I hit F5 to refresh, and there's no changes there. So it's a great thing about version control is that you can go into something, you can experiment with something, you can play around with it, hit a dead end, or decide that it's not working for you, and just back out of it. And you noticed before how I'd committed some of the refactoring that I'd done, and I committed that separately to this tree stuff. And now you know why. It's because my default is just to work cautiously like that. My default is to make small commits so that at any point, if I need to back out of the situation I'm in, I can do that really quickly. So my new plan is to make an indent level here. So the indented level of the note, indicating its position in the hierarchy of notes. Now I can make my test data again so that I've got this set up the way I want, but this time I'm going to have, it's just going to be structured as a list, and I can use a little bit of creative indenting here to make it seem like a tree, like what it's kind of supposed to represent. So we've got child note 1, child note 2, but I'm going to set up an indent level for each of these. But the indent level here is going to be 1, so you can see that we're nesting these under the previous 0 level. I can also make this. I'll just make this indent level that's basically undefined if there is no indent. If it isn't a child, if it's a root item, this will be set to undefined. Now go back to look at our code. Let's get this rendering like a tree again, but this time we're avoiding using recursion. It's not necessary. I better refresh that, I suppose. What I haven't done here is I haven't restarted my build process. So I just want to restart my live reload build process. Once this comes online, I can go back and refresh the web page. So again, we should see. So we're seeing all our notes now because, these notes are just these child notes are in the same list, but they're not indented the way they should be because they're supposed to be children. So let's fix that. I wonder if I could just do that here by having a margin. Margin left equals, this is a procedurally defined margin. So we can basically say that if the note indent level is equal to undefined, then our left margin is 0. Otherwise, our left margin, it's better be a quoted string, I think. 0 pixels. Otherwise, it can be, what are we looking for? We want the indent level multiplied by some value. Let's say 5 pixels. Let's call this. Let's make this a variable so I can put it at the top. So indent step. I'm going to put this in a string. So we're using JavaScript string interpolation here. I don't need the extra parentheses there, so I'll get rid of them. Pixels. So that gives us like a procedural margin that should indent it, but I do need to kind of define this. So let's put this somewhere obvious up the top. Actually, I'll put it down here near these default notes. Yeah, my copy and paste did not work, but there you go. So each indent step is 5 pixels. So I'm saving that. That's not really enough. Like you can see, it's indented a little bit here now, but let's triple that. Does that work? Maybe 20 pixels. Oh, I want it to be big. 30 pixels. Yeah, that's good. Maybe even 35. What the hell? Yeah, cool. So now potentially I can add a grandchild note as well. Let's see. Let's add 2 of these. Oh, but they're not. Oh, so they're still at indent level 1. But let's change them to indent level 2. Magic. So you can see we're building out a tree, and isn't it kind of cool that we can actually create a tree without even using recursion? It's sort of like we've cheated somehow. But drag and drop should still work. But when I drag and drop it now, I'm not going to reevaluate the. I'm not reevaluating the indent level. So you can see that wherever I put it, it's still going to be at that same indent level. So we need to come back and we need to fix that. I'm just going to start making some notes of things that I need to come back and fix and to clean up. So I've already been doing that here, but after drag and drop, this should probably actually be part of milestone 1 actually rather than the cleanup. So let's put it here. Or after drag and drop, recompute the index or the indent level of the node. So that's nice and simple. We've kind of expanded this to a tree, like that kind of works. It's kind of cool. I think I'm going to commit at this point actually. I'm pretty happy with that. It's so much simpler than treating it as a tree. I'm just going to double check my changes. So I've added indent level. It's an optional field for the note interface. I've updated my make note. I've updated my test data. That can stay the way it is for the moment. We can't really go to production with this sort of default test data, but it's really cool for our intermediate testing. In fact, I could move this out to the test app, but this does not need to be in the component at all. I could already do that if I wanted to, but I'll clean that up later. In fact, I'll make that part of the cleanup here as move the test data to the example app. I also have to publish the example app. So the example app itself is not available on GitHub yet, and that will happen later. And you can see how down here where I've procedurally computed the margin. So just double check my code. So implemented a hierarchical structure for the notes, but using a flat list and indent level. So it's not a real tree. So I've committed that. I will push that now just in case anyone wants to grab that and have a play with it. And I will restart my build pipeline. Now what's next? So I'm going to do that one a bit later. Let's use the indent key, pressing the indent key to create a new note, a new nested note, I should say. So to do this, we're going to want to have code added to onKeyDown. Where's that? So I've got my event handler here for onKeyDown. You can see what this is doing here. When we press the enter key, this is where we're adding a new note. When we hit the Control Delete, that's where we delete a note. This is the code that we would have had to change if we converted this over to a tree. This code would have got a lot more complicated. So I've avoided that complication by basically keeping it as a flat list, like faking the tree basically. What I want to do here now is I want to find out what the event details are for the indent key. Well, the tab key is what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to chuck a console.log in here to print out the event. So I don't have to look up. This is one thing I love about JavaScript. I don't have to look up the docs for the onKeyDown event. I could do that, like I don't know, but I can just log out what's in it. I can log out anything in JavaScript and see what's in it. It's kind of, depending on your programming language, it's a lot more difficult to do that in other programming languages. So here we go. Let's look at the console. So I'm going to select a note and I'm going to hit the tab key. let's expand out this and see what's in here. So, you know, this I could have just guessed this really. Key is tab. It's pretty obvious, right? But, you know, it's not always so obvious. And so, you know, in those situations where it's not obvious, console.log is your best friend. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to, when key is equal to tab. And this might not work, by the way, if you're not working in React. If you're working with a vanilla JavaScript, if we look back at what I printed out in console.log, this is a synthetic event. This is like a React construct where they basically gloss over all the differences between the browsers. And so it's possible that this thing doesn't work outside of React. It's possible that this doesn't work in other browsers, you know, maybe besides Chrome. So be careful if you're following along and thinking you can do this in vanilla JavaScript. It's going to work a little bit differently. So when I hit the tab key, this is so simple now. Like all I really want to do is I want to update the indent level of the particular note. Now I've got the index coming through already. So I can say, I can pull out the note that I want. I'm going to increment its index level. I better check first. Is the indent level equal to undefined? If it is, then I will set it to 1. Otherwise, I'm expecting it to be a number, and I'm going to indent it by 1, plus equals 1. So I'm adding 1 to that field. And then this doesn't feel quite right. It feels like I'm about to abuse React, but I'm not sure off the top of my head of a better way of doing this. I'm basically just going to reset the state from the existing notes. Let's see if that works. So I've updated a field in line, and I'm using set state to just tell React that I've updated the state and that it should re-render. It's possible that I should maybe refactor this code and have each note be its own separate component and have the indent level be the state of that component. I might make a note to do that. For now, I'm just going to kind of hack it. So I'll just put a note here. So refactor so that each note is its own React component. That might be part of a future tidy up. It might not be part of this milestone, but we'll see. With indent level as its state. So that would be a slightly more elegant way, I think, of structuring this. But who knows what extra problems I'm going to be causing myself if I try and do that. And so it's nice and simple like this. Hopefully it will work. Let's give it a go. So I'll take note 1, and I'm going to hit tab. Woohoo! Oh, I didn't see how it's focusing the next note when I do that. That's because the regular behavior of the tab key is being applied. So that's why I'm calling prevent default in some of these other instances here. So prevent default will prevent that behavior from happening. So now I should, how cool is that? While we're here, let's do shift tab. So that should be fairly simple. I just want to put another if statement here. I want to say if event dot, I'm looking for the shift key here. So shift, oh there we go. If shift key is pressed, I'll want to do some behavior basically to unindent it. Otherwise, I'm doing this behavior here. A lot of this is the same actually. So the extraction of the note can go above that if statement, and the setting of the state can go below it. And then all I want to do is change the behavior here so that if it's undefined, we can't do anything. Like basically, if we're trying to unindent something and it's all the way back to the start anyway, we're not gonna do anything. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna say if it's not undefined, and let's also say that it's got to be greater than the 0. So So it's already indented. We're gonna subtract 1. So minus equal 1. So we're gonna minus 1 from the indent level there. Let's now see if we can indent and unindent. How cool is that? I feel a commit coming on. So small code commits. I'm pretty happy with this code. It could be refactored and made more elegant, but I'm pretty happy with it. So let's commit. Let's preserve this code so that I don't lose it, so I don't mess it up somehow. You know, just double checking here the changes that I've made, and that it all looks good. There's nothing. This is like rubber ducking. If you know what rubber ducking is, it's like if you don't have another programmer to talk to, you know, put a rubber duck on your desk, explain your code or your problem to your rubber duck, and that process of verbalizing it and explaining it will help you understand what the problem is so you can fix it. So I'm like doing my own peer review here. I'm reviewing my own code. What have I done here? So I've added support for tab and shift plus tab to indent and unindent notes. And we'll get that up, git push. So this is going up to the code repository right now. It's up there now if you want to have a look at the code changes for yourself. Restarting the build pipeline. What is next? Let's go and have a look at my plan. So I've done both of these things. That's cool. So I can indent. I can tab to indent. Shift plus tab to unindent. Deleting a parent node should also delete the children. I want to refactor so that each node. Oh, that's something I'm going to move to cleanup. That was that refactor that I wanted to do. After drag and drop, compute the nested indent level of the node. Let's try doing that. I think let's try doing that now. Oh, another thing is pressing enter to make a new node should make it at the same indent level. I'm actually going to have a crack at this one. I think that'll be a good one to have in there. So what we get at the moment is if I make a new note, if I hit enter to make a new note under there, it actually makes it all the way at the end there. So that's not good. That's not really what I wanted. It should put it, for start, it should put it after the note where you hit enter, and it should put it at the same indent level as that note. This should be pretty easy to fix. I think, see, we're concatenating a new note on the end, so that's why I added the note to the end. It's not adding it to the right spot. I need to use this splice function to splice in a new element at a particular point. Let's do that now. So I've got a new note. I actually want to make this at the same level as the existing note. So let's pull out the existing note. From that index variable. So let's just full screen this, so what's going on here. So we've got the index here. We're pulling the existing node out. I'm going to make the new note based on the existing note's indent level, which could be undefined, which means it's like a root note. That's fine. That's exactly okay. Now we want to get this into our array of notes. So we'll do what I did here with the delete. So where I'm basically using the slice function to make a copy of the notes array. So it's just the best way to work. Make a copy of it. Edit the copy so that we don't confuse React, because this note is stored in the state, and we don't want to change. We want to try and avoid at least changing the state without React knowing about it. And now I'm going to splice into this list of notes the new note. So the start, does the start matter? Yeah, it does. So this is where I want to splice it, which is after the current note, which is at index. Now the delete count is, I don't want to delete anything. I don't want to remove any notes. And then the items that I add next, I can add as many items as I want here that I will add. But I've only got one. I've only got this new note. So I'm adding a new note into splicing it in, and then I'm using set state to replace the notes. So this is what tells React that the data is updated and that it should re-render. So the result of that is that React will automatically call our render function and re-render our entire thing. Now this is another example of where it might be useful to consider rendering each of the notes separately as a separate component. That could make this the rendering and the update process a little bit more efficient. So let's see what we got here now. I should be able to hit enter. I've added it before, so it's not quite what I wanted. It's close. This is a classic off by one error. I actually want to splice it in at one after the existing note. So I put +1 there. Let's see. Cool. But it's not focusing it. Now focusing it, I would like to have it automatically focus. You see the original existing note is still focused there. That is something I want to correct. And I've actually got it in my cleanup list here already. Autofocus New Elements. That is a little bit tricky. If this was a regular HTML input element, we could use the autofocus field or attribute on the HTML to be able to use that autofocus and have it focused when it's created. But we can't do that with a content editable div, which is what we're using in place of an input element. So I do have a plan of how I can kind of get that working. It's just a little bit tricky. So I'm gonna come back and clean that up later. Well, I've just noticed one thing there that I have finished, and the refactoring of the tests, which I'm not going to do, at least not in this live stream. So, pressing enter makes a new note at the same level of indent. We've done that. I'll do this one now. Update, drag and drop to recompute the indent level of the node. So the problem I'm fixing here is, like, I want to be able to drag this thing around and see how the indent level is like buggered there. It's too far in. Or I can move note 1. I can move note 1 under the grandchild, and it puts it all the way back there. It should really drop it underneath that indent level. So how can we tackle that? Now this is all going to be handled in the onDrag end function. So I'm moving it basically to the destination index. So I think the thing that's before the destination index, the note that's before that, is probably going to be the parent of where this is going to be dropped. Will that work? I don't know if this is going to yield the behavior that I want. Let's try it. Let's call this parent node. So we'll pull out the note at that index. There might not be a note at that index, but I'll come back and fix that later if that's a problem. Now let's pick out the we'll call this the new parent node. So it's the parent. It's the node that's going to be the new parent of the child. So this one is here is going to be. We'll make this the source. So the thing that we're dragging is going to be the child. And this is a little bit of a fudge, but let's just say we're going to make the indent level be the indent level of the parent +1. Indent level, this is telling me that indent level is possibly undefined, but we can handle that. So if it is equal to undefined, then the new indent level is just going to be 1, as in the next indent level down from a root node. Otherwise, it's going to be that indent level +1. We're reordering it, so we're putting it in the right position, and we're setting state to tell React to re-render this this component. Let's see if that gets anywhere near where we want it to be. I don't know if this is going to be the exact sort of behavior that I want, but can I put this node under the? Well, it kind of works. You see it jump. So, and it hasn't. What I think we have to do here. The new parent node. That's not going to be right. I don't think. I think it's actually going to be the previous one that is the new parent. Let's see if that works. close. It's close. Maybe we shouldn't have it +1. Maybe we should put it. We should always put it at the same level as the parent, which basically means that we can say that it's just equal to that. So whether it's undefined or a number, it doesn't matter. Let's just copy the parent indent level over, and this might give us some nice behavior. No, that doesn't do anything like what I want. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to print out this parent note. Let's print out the parent note. I kind of want to see what it looks like. So what parent is this? The parent should be no, it's not parents. So that -1 there did not do what I wanted it to. So that was right, and it's not even a parent because we're not placing it underneath the parent now. This is like the the sibling. Let's call it a sibling note. Let's see what this does. So we're taking note 1. We're going to drop it next to child note 1, and it's the sibling now of child note 1. So it should be placed after these grandchildren. That's something I might correct later. This is better. This is better. We can still indent it, of course. We can still hit tab here to indent it as much as we like. I should probably stop that from happening. I might put that on my cleanup list. So should only be able to indent a note 1 level. Okay, so the other problem here, now there might not actually be a note at this index. So this, I could be dropping this at index 0. Actually, that just works fine. It just works fine. Does it work though if I bring it all the way to the end? It does. That's cool. I thought there might be some issues there, but and there might be issues there if you delete everything, or it might just work. But I'm pretty happy with that. What else do I have on my list here? Deleting the parent node should also delete the children. So let's just do this one last thing, and then we'll wrap up this session. So here we are at the delete. Basically what we want to do here is delete any other note after this node that that also has an indent level greater than the current node. Something like that. I'm thinking maybe a for loop. So we're starting like after the current node, all the way to the end of the notes list. And how are we going to do this? It's almost like we want like a partial filter on the notes list. The filter function doesn't. I don't think it can help me with that. Some sort of functional programming would be great here. I could probably use something like Ramda to do this. I'm just not that skilled at Ramda. So what I might do, I've already made a copy of the notes, so I can actually just remove stuff from this. I don't need this ++ here. Let's actually break this out to a while loop. So let's make, so we're starting at the next note from the one that was deleted. And while there are still notes, and this now is going to be from the copy. So let's look at the copy of the notes. So we made the copy here. We made a clone of the notes of the array using the slice function. So until we get to the end, so we don't need to increment. We just need to look at the next note after the one we're deleting. Let's just let's just grab that note. So this is the note to be deleted. So we're grabbing that out. And what we're going to say is if this is potentially a child note, we don't know yet, or it actually could be a grandchild. But actually we want to delete everything that's got an indent level bigger than the note. So the child note is notes note index. Let's rename this to be a little bit more specific. We'll call it child note index to denote that we're looking at the index of a child note, potentially. If the child note dot indent level, if it is defined, so it's not equal to undefined, and the indent level is greater than the note that we're deleting, let's actually capture this indent level up here. So node.indent level or 0. So what we're saying here is if it's not undefined, we use that. Otherwise, we use 0. So we're defaulting to 0 so that we can just use it here. So if it's not equal to undefined and it's got a greater indent level than the parent, let's remove it from our copy of the notes. So we're using Splice here at the child note index, taking out one item. Otherwise, if the indent level is not greater than the parent, that means we've got to stop. We're finished looking at child nodes here, and we've got to stop now. So let's break out of the loop. And ultimately, we're going to remove the note that we want to remove as well, and set state to update. Now, I've got a bit of an issue here. That's a TS lint issue. So we're never actually updating this variable. So we're never actually incrementing that, and that's because we're removing the notes at each point. So we're never really moving on in the array. We're just deleting child nodes, and we're letting the rest of the array sort of come to us. But I can make that a const to make TS lint happy. Let's see if this works. Just force a refresh to make sure. So I'm going to delete note 2, and it should delete child note 1 or the grandchild, child note 2. It shouldn't delete note 3. If the code works as I expect, it should stop there. And it's completely blown up. What have I done wrong here? So that was all the new code. Let's get rid of that for a moment. I've put it like an infinite loop basically in the browser, so it's completely killed this. Let's get rid of that and open a fresh page, fresh web page here. Localhost 3000. Oh, that's not the one. Localhost 3000. I just want to make sure that it was that code that I just commented out that new code. I'm just going to make sure I can delete something now. So that works. That deletes one thing at a time. So that's cool. So there's definitely a bug, some sort of infinite looping bug in this code. Let's see if we can find it. So we're pulling out the note that we want to delete. Let's make that obvious. Sometimes it helps just to make code more obvious, just to rename it, and it helps you see problems. So what do I do there? Let's just full screen this so we can see what we're doing. So note to delete. I could rename this indent level of node to delete, but it's just taking it a bit too far, maybe. So we're pulling that out, or if it's undefined, we set it to 0, which is a root note. We're setting up our child note index to be index +1, so we're starting to look at notes after the one that is to be deleted, which are children until they're not. We're looping through, so while it's less than notes.length. So note that we're deleting notes here. We're deleting notes here, so this length will be getting smaller and smaller until we exit, until either we exit or until we see a note that has the same indent level. Now we're pulling out a child note from child note index, and we're checking that if the indent level is not undefined, sorry, and the indent level is greater than the parent indent level. Let's just rename that to be parent indent level. That'll make that a little bit clearer as to what that is. So I'm just using refactor rename there. That's F2 in Visual Studio Code. That allows you to change the name of a variable and all the other instances or uses of that variable. Now here I'm removing the child note index at that point. I'm removing 1. I could actually count up a bunch of them. So if I wanted to remove five of these things, I could remove 5 in one go. It just makes the code a little bit more complicated. Probably would be more efficient though. But considering it doesn't work anyway, that's my main focus, is to fix the problem with this code. Otherwise we're breaking out. So I don't see a problem with this code, but I mean, running the code tells me there is a problem. So I thought of a better way to do this anyway. I could say that if the indent level of the child is equal to the parent or is less than the parent, or less than equal to the parent. So this will cover the case of where it's undefined. This will cover the case of where it's a number. But it's complaining about undefined there, which is a bit annoying. Let's break this out into separate if statements. Maybe the problem will become apparent. If the child note indent level is undefined, it can't possibly be a child note, so we break out. Otherwise, we know that the indent level of the child is going to be a number, but the parent indent is always going to be a number as well, because it's going to be. Let's make this code a little bit clearer as well using a ternary statement. So if the parent node indent level is undefined, we're going to default it to 0. Otherwise, we're just going to use that because we expect that to be a number. So this is always going to be a valid number now. So I can simplify this if statement here. So if the child, and let's turn this around. If it's equal to or less than then we break out. So the default is to break out and not have an infinite loop. Otherwise, we have a child and we can remove it from our notes list. And our notes list is here array is getting smaller, so we're eventually going to break out of the while loop. If all we have are children. Fingers crossed. Let's try this. See what happens. So I'm going to delete note 2. And I've completely busted it. Okay. This might be a good time to do some debugging. Let's see if we can kill this. Open it up again. I'm actually going to step through this code now. I think I'm taking this step now of actually stepping through the code. Let's full screen the browser. Assuming I can find the code that I want. If I can't, an easy way to get to it, because I should have source map set up. It should show me the TypeScript code. But an easy way to find what you're looking for is to use the debugger statement. I don't think it's a function. Let me try that. TSLint's going to complain, isn't it? It's not allowed, says TSLint. Anyway, we don't care what TSLint thinks at the moment. So now I should be able to trigger delete and hit my breakpoint. So I have a breakpoint in the code. I'm just going to And you can see that here we've got the TSX file. So it has the source maps have automatically worked, which is fantastic. I'm actually going to put a... Well, maybe that didn't work because I've hit a breakpoint like way down here, which is like not quite where I expected it to be. I'll set a manual breakpoint here. Now that I know where that code is, I can change that. I'll refresh this. Yeah, let me start that again. Hopefully it will remember that breakpoint that I just added. Yep, cool. I'll see if this works. It might help me understand what the problem is here. No. I need to look at the settings of this to see if I can get debugging working. But that's a separate thing now. Let's have another quick look at this code, see if we can find out what the problem is here. What I could do here, this is a bit of a hack. But this is going to help debugging without, if I can make this not kind of go into an infinite loop and sort of break the browser. So if hits is greater than 10, let's just break out. So this is a big hack that we want to get rid of, but it will force this thing to stop. So I don't unnecessarily destroy the browser like I'm doing. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some console logging in here. Seeing as I couldn't get the debugging working, I need to kind of fiddle around with the configuration to get that working. I haven't even looked at that at all in this project because I just haven't needed to do debugging yet. I am going to put here a console.log for the node to delete. A console.log, well, down here for the child node. Oh. Node to delete, not node to delete. So this is the child node. I'll just put a console.log here just so I know where the children start. And just put a little sort of special code there. We can see that. Let's switch over to the console. Now I've put this special kind of get out clause here, so to stop the debugger kind of seizing up basically on this on however I've made this infinite loop. And I might instantly see what the problem is now, or it might be more difficult than that. Let's see. So Control Delete to delete it. It's broken out after 10. It's always stuck on the child node. Why is it always stuck on the child node? This is such a stupid mistake. Why did they make these functions be almost the same? So if you know anything about JavaScript, you probably already picked this up while I was coding. I typed slice. I meant to type splice. That's it. I'm pretty safe. So it wasn't actually removing the thing, and so it was always just constantly looping and hitting that first child node, and not removing it and just looping on that. So if you want to know how to kill a web browser, that's a good way to do it. And you know we've sort of cleaned up our code a bit. On the way here as well, so hopefully this will work now. Let's see, I should be able to delete everything down but not delete node 3. I'm expecting node 3 to survive this. Cool, job done. I still have a console log here that I want to get rid of. Let's do a commit, do a quick check to make sure that there's nothing shonky going in here. That looks good. So using Control plus delete to delete a note now deletes all the children. Commit. Let's push it. So that's going up there now onto the repo so that you can you can have a look at that yourself. And that's it. That's it for this live streaming. I'm gonna draw the line here. You've seen me come a long way. Like I've come a long way through creating a Git repository so I can open source this code. I created a test bed for the React component. I published it on NPM. In fact, let's before we finish, let's go back to the screen and we'll republish. So I'm going to publish the latest version of this. To publish it, to publish the code that I've got, all I need to do is update the version number in my package file. So I've gone into my package file here. We'll update this to 0.0.4. I've saved that. And now from my terminal, I can run the publish command, which I've already kind of set up and used previously. And you'll see an updated version of this come up on NPM, like just a couple of moments after this publishing completes. You can see here that it's running TS-lint as part of the publish process. So I was previously running tests here, but due to the problems with testing, I've removed that. Then it's running the TypeScript compiler, and then it's publishing the compiled code. And so that truly is it. Now we've built a React component. We've published it on NPM. You've seen how it can be tested in a test bed. One of the really important things is using NPM link, so we don't have to go through that process of update some code, publish it on NPM so that we can test it in a test app. We can use NPM link to create a symbolic link between our component and our test bed, and that's really what is crucial to connecting up our test bed with the code that we're testing. So please come back and have a look at the Git repository later. Just let me quickly show you where that is so you can find it easily later, if I can find it myself. Here it is. Yeah, so the Git repository for this is at my GitHub, Ashley Davis, React Outliner. There is some code here that shows you how to use the outliner. There's a little bit more work that needs to be done on the README that will show you how to get this and compile it for yourself. It's published on NPM. We can see here version 3 was published. If I refresh this now, we should see that version 0.4 was published. Yep, so there we are. Please come back later to my YouTube channel, The Data Wrangler. Check out the coding live stream playlist. You'll see all parts, including parts 5 and part 6, which I've recorded today. And that's it. There's a little bit more work to be done on this, but I'm not going to live stream that. I'm going to tidy it up. I'm going to add some props so that you can extract the data after it's been edited. I'm going to fix some of the loose ends, and I'll be tweeting when it's finally ready and when I finish the README. So please find me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is AshleyDavis75. I'm going to be back for another live stream tomorrow, but that's going to be my usual coding, my usual weekly coding live stream, which is working on my Kanban board extension to Visual Studio Code. So if you like what I'm doing, tomorrow is going to be similar stuff, slightly different environment. We're developing a Visual Studio Code extension. Please join me tomorrow for my next live stream. Thank you very much for watching.